So joining me now is the CEO of the Education Trust, Denise Forte, and the President of the American Council on Education, Ted Mitchell. Both are longtime practitioners and leaders in the policy community. So Denise and Ted, thank you for joining us today. As we're recording this, Congress and the White House are talking about the Build Back Better legislation. So Ted, I wonder if you could just start by telling us, if you could give us some sense of the implications of this bill. Like, how big of a deal is this?
Sure. I think it's a huge deal. And I think that the important thing, and I think Denise and I are allies in this, is thinking about it not just as a one-sector, two-sector, three-sector initiative, but this really is the largest single investment that the federal government has made in education since the Great Society programs. And so whether you think about pre-K or the work for college and beyond, this is a big deal.
Both Ted and I would agree that there is more to do. I think there's certainly some big steps that were made in higher ed, whether it's the increase in the Pell Grant, the eligibility around Pell Grant. We now include DACA. That's very exciting. The information and availability of these new completion grants to help kids stay in school. Again, we want more, but it's a good start.
So speaking of wanting more, free community college did fall out. What do you think the odds of that are coming back?
I think at this point, that's pretty baked, which is really unfortunate. There was a big opportunity here to get more kids into school and not have the debt afterwards. There was a big opportunity for students of color, students from low-income communities. But honestly, the free college movement, I don't think it's going to stop. We have to keep going, but it was very disappointing that that fell out.
We supported free community college. We also supported doubling the Pell Grant. And while we didn't get free community college, the increase didn't get to double. The increase in the Pell Grant will provide significant opportunities to some of those very same students to pursue, whether it's a community college or a four-year college degree. So, and I think one of the things that's interesting about all of these programs is we're going to learn through them. As they're implemented, as they're deployed, we're going to learn what works, and hopefully we'll build smart policy.
So there is a lot of talk generally about higher ed and workforce needing to be more aligned. And there's a lot of workforce funding, there's a lot of education funding, a lot of it is siloed. Some of it comes together a little bit. There are the community college and industry partnership grants. I wonder if you think that there's any impact that this legislation will have about bringing together higher ed and workforce.
I think that one of the things that's happened in the last 4 to 5 years is even the most traditional higher education institution has understood very clearly from their students and families that jobs at the end of the path are really important. And so I think that in addition to a general wake-up call, this legislation provides some of the bricks and mortar to be able to move from the idea to actual reality.
The tough thing, we know that 4 out of 10 African Americans and Native American students are not completing. They're having real completion problems. And the same thing goes for our white students. So something needs to be done. And hopefully, again, foot in the door, we encourage more states to take this up. And completion programs will start seeding, I think, some evidence around there.
So there had been some talk about this reconciliation package reducing child poverty by 50%. And that's the overall thing. But what do you think about some of the equity implications of the higher ed and workforce provisions?
Oh, I think they're big. Look, we have an opportunity, certainly with the increase in Pell Grant, to make college more affordable. These completion grants, again, getting kids to stay in school.
Across the country, issues of disaggregated outcomes have really become the way that college and university leaders and communities think about their success. And the Build Back Better programs that are going to be supported target those communities in ways that we really haven't done specifically before.
What do you think has been missing from some of the news coverage about some of these stories? You know, you mentioned the Dreamers, rural students, older students. Is there anything that hasn't gotten traction that you think is going to be potentially important in here?
there's a lot of support out there for teacher prep, meaning how we prepare teachers for the classroom, and increasing the number of diverse teachers so we have a more diverse educator workforce. Everybody probably knows the research, but it's pretty dire out there when you look at the number of teachers of color in the classroom who are, there are a ton of them out there that are very successful, but we need more. So hopefully more people will start talking about that as well.
Missing piece is teacher ed. And I think that that's one we're really going to have to come back around, both in terms of absolute numbers, but the diversification of the teaching force is an absolute must across the country. I think in terms of what's gotten short shrift in the press, I think that DACA and the eligibility of DACA students for federal aid is a huge, huge step forward for this country. And I hope that we're able to celebrate that at the signing of the bill. I think the other thing that we don't talk enough about, I think that free community college and that whole debate has taken up a lot of time, and it should. But one of the things that Pell Grants do quite marvelously is provide opportunities for students, financial opportunities that address directly the kinds of things that students tell us are standing in the way of their completion: childcare, transportation, food, housing insecurity. And Pell Grants, because of their flexibility, can cover not only tuition, but those costs that are the real impediments for student success.
Ted, you also mentioned the Department of Commerce, which is not always in these conversations. I wonder, and we did have the Secretary of Commerce, Labor, and Education at Horizons this past summer, and they said that was the first time that they had all spoken together. But I wonder how you think that they fit into this mix, where it's often an education and labor crowd.
And they've stepped forward, and they have both acknowledged the need for commerce to play a role in building up communities of industry, education, partnerships, and to make that a way for U.S. industry and U.S. entrepreneurship to build. And I think that impetus, combined with the Labor Department's focus on workforce development and the Education Department's industry-leading voice and the people who are doing the training, I think is a great combination.
Well, thank you very much, Ted and Denise, for joining us today.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Really great. Thank you, David.